I would like to go from one damn good guest to another damn good guest. Esteban Carrillo, welcome to the show, man. How you doing today? You doing all right?
Jamal, yeah, I'm doing good. I'm doing great. Then hello to everyone also who's joining us.
Absolutely. Esteban, he's Ecuadorian journalist, currently writing for The Cradle, previously with Sir English. Um, I'm glad you could join me today, Esteban. So, a few things have been taking place that I came across. One is from The Cradle itself, actually, and maybe both of these things are related to one another. So, The Cradle came out with this article pointing out that Syria is being UAE brokered a secret deal, rapprochement, as they call it, between Israel and Syria. Now, I could argue that this rapprochement had already been in effect, considering that Syria, despite being bombed by Israel, wouldn't fire a shot in anger,
Exactly.
despite the fact that they were destroying Damascus and everything else. And even recently, as the Syrian government, well, the Jihadi government, was going after the Druze community, where they were effectively murdering Druze, and Israel starts bombing the hell out of Syria as a result, because the Druze community effectively was pissed off. Israel was backing the Druze. I don't understand the politics in this. This is a little bit more granular than I understand it from this distance. But you explained this to me, actually, and HTS was being bombed by Israel because of that.
Yeah.
Again, they wouldn't fire a shot in anger at Israel, meaning these jihadists who would go and murder civilians wouldn't touch the Israelis, despite the fact that they've taken territory.
Exactly.
And then you get the jihadi president here in France getting like state honors in France with them whitewashing this kind of ethnic cleansing that's taking place in Syria. Look at this. That is amazing.
That is, yeah. Picture of the decade.
That is like that piece. That is astonishing, considering what is happening in Syria with the minority communities and with his goons going through killing minorities.
Exactly.
So they are buddies with Israel now. Is that what we are to understand? Because I don't believe Israel sees them that way, but at the very least, there's some kind of ceasefire that's happening between Israel, Turkey, and what's left of Syria.
Yeah, well, Shara, the guy you just showed, Julani, the chameleon, he yesterday he confirmed these talks, right? Because what we had published was this report from I forget the source, but that the UAE was mediating, and we know the UAE, first of all, is very tight with Israel. The UAE and Israel two peas in a pod, and the Gulf also very involved in Syria, right? So the UAE kind of mediating. And yesterday, Shara, after his meeting with Macron, he confirms there are indirect negotiations, and he says they are meant to de-escalate tensions and prevent a loss of control. I'm not sure what he means by that. Like Israel last week bombed right outside his house.
Yes.
Yes. They've been bombing, pretty much wherever they want at this point. So he's he really is like the perfect. He's playing the perfect role, right, of this Western-like official with the double speak, with the not actually doing anything but appearing like he's doing something, and very sharply dressed, of course, Ahmed Al-Shara.
Beautiful suit.
Yeah. Like I'm sure the shopping trip in Paris must have been insane for him.
Yeah, I know.
In any case,
all right.
It's really okay. So the rapprochement talks, right? Yeah. Not surprising at all. Apparently, we just saw this actually earlier today. Haaretz reported that a delegation from the Julani government secretly visited Israel in late April, so just a few weeks ago. And the delegation included a senior defense official and figures from the Cunetria province, Cunetria in the south, around where the Druze are located, where you're referring to. So obviously, there's this a path towards normalization, right? Let's call it what it is. We said rapprochement in our headline. What it really is leading towards is normalization. Shara was asked a few weeks ago too, like, would you normalize with Israel? And he didn't say no. He didn't say yes. Like I said, he's towing the line pretty well. But we know from their actions that they will normalize at the end of the day. As you said, Israel right now is occupying a 500 square kilometer area in the south of Syria. Is looking to take control of the Druze villages. A few weeks ago, the Israeli authorities said we're not going to allow any armed presence south of Damascus.
Right.
So that's an occupation, right? And if they normalize, they're gonna Israel's gonna keep that territory, right? There's no.
I wouldn't call it an occupation. I would call it an annexation, because he is not going to do anything about it. Meaning, it's not like he is saying, "Oh my God, I can't believe Israel's taking parts of Syria." He hasn't said anything about it one way or the other. Israel just took it.
Mm-hmm. Exactly, and they destroy Syria's military infrastructure entirely. And now the visit to France, which I think is just so fascinating, because Shara/Giuliani, up until 4 months ago, had a $10 million bounty on his head for terrorist activities. He is the former founder of Al-Qaeda in Syria. He is the deputy commander of the founder of ISIS. Yeah. He was in Iraqi prison between 2009 and 2011 for terrorist activities. And in France also, right? Like France, just a few years ago, it was like the site of an attack by ISIS. And but we know that France has, for the past 15 years, since the start of the dirty war in Syria, they've been one of the main backers. At one point, this giant cement company in France, Lafarge, was selling cement directly to ISIS, was providing them with building materials so that ISIS could build tunnels and overcome the attacks, from the Russian Air Force. And this is all in court documents at this point, because Lafarge was taken to court from taking money from ISIS, from a prescribed terrorist organization. Don't expect too much to come out of that at the end of the day. Like I said, like now the deputy commander of the founder of ISIS is sitting in the Élysée Palace, shaking hands with Emmanuel Macron and normalizing. Macron essentially saying we're going to call for the lifting of sanctions. He also saying we need to, do something, I guess, about these massacres that are happening in Syria. All virtue signaling, all window dressing, just empty rhetoric. Worth mentioning that the Lebanese president was also in Paris yesterday, Joseph Aoun, likely also met with Shara, because there's been clashes too between the Lebanese army and these former ISIS thugs that call themselves now the Syrian army. So all of these movements are happening, right? But at the end of the day, like I said, the path is towards normalization with Israel.
HTS is made up of multiple groups, though. It's not an individual group. And I remember at one of the meetings, one of those groups asked them, "Hey, are we going to do something about Israel?" And he says, "Not right now, because, we don't have the power to do it." Israel can't be all that easy with HTS. And will HTS even accept him normalizing relations with Israel? Meaning, does that damage his credibility among some of the groups that make up HTS, and as you said, call themselves the new Syrian army? Would they be okay with that?
Yeah, completely. Because HTS is okay. It's different factions. You're right. It's a bit of an umbrella, I guess. But at the end of the day, these are all were mainly foreign jihadists or former elements in the Syrian army. From like back when the civil war started, that accepted living under this system, right? Under the caliphate, under the ISIS caliphate that was in a way established in Idlib, right, where HTS ruled. HTS, let's remember, is simply the rebranding, right? They went from Al-Qaeda in Syria to the Nusra Front to a name that I can't remember right now, and then to Hayat Tahrir al-Sham, HTS. So it's just rebranding, right? And now to the Syrian government, right? They rebranded like one final time. But among the Sunni extremists, the most, the Salafi elements, the maniacs, right? The ISIS maniacs who believe that strapping on a bomb and walking into a mosque to kill Shiites, it's the path to heaven, or that who are currently taking, sexual slaves, like young Alawite women as sex slaves, who are massacring Alawites, who are, like trying to massacre Druze, but are be running into a wall in that regard. They don't really, they're not there, to wage war against Israel, against the occupation entity. They are there to take control of land, to expand their territory, they're perfectly fine with Israel, because at the end of the day, Israel has proven to be an ally to them, right? Like a few years ago, HTS even received after one of the clashes during the war, they received medical treatment in Israel.
I
Right?
saw.
Yeah. So no, I don't think so. I don't think there will be like an internal strife, right? If anything, it's gonna be about the fact that he's trying that Shara keeps promising inclusivity. He keeps promising what's the word to kind of keep things quiet. One would say, to stop the massacres, to stop the ethnic cleansing. I think that would be a bigger point of contention between all of these former ISIS and Al Qaeda members than we're not gonna go and wage war against Israel. Like they go and wage war against what's left of Hezbollah before they even think about waging war against Israel or against Iran or against Shiite militias in Iraq. Like their list of enemies is pretty long before you actually get to Israel. So I don't see that as being much of an issue.
There was another story that came out that is disturbing on its face. This one, with the U.S. apparently discussing taking over the administration of Gaza. The thought being that the U.S. would, I guess, control Gaza up until a new government is formed, which is pretty amazing. I mean, they're effectively saying, hey, Palestinians can't run themselves.
Yeah,
it requires the U.S. administration. And for whatever reason, Israel, it's just this is a wild post. That's all. Give me your take on this.
It has been that, what's happening in Gaza right now, it can only be really described as the final solution, right? This is what's happening in Gaza is, well, first of all, total destruction. At this point, it really is no food at all. Today, like the last communal kitchens closed because literally no more food.
Yeah.
And what's going to happen next is they're going to be pushed, the Palestinians. This is what, when they announced the total conquest of Gaza a few days ago, when Israel approved these plans, what they mean is they're going to come in and they're going to try to push the 2 million Palestinians, or around 2 million who are still there, to the south, right? To Rafah, where everything has been flattened, where there's really just nothing left. So they're going to be just a mass there. And this is what the U.S. or what this report is talking about this administration. It doesn't mean, the Palestinians will be allowed to return to where their homes used to be, and then the United States will impose an administration over Gaza. No, it means they will run the concentration camp that is being established in Gaza right now and distribute aid, right? And the terms of these, what they're discussing is like no Palestinian is going to be allowed to be in control, neither Hamas nor the Palestinian Authority. And also they're talking about a U.S. official. They haven't said who, maybe they'll just dump this on Marco Rubio as well. Since he seems to be, Trump's go-to guy at this point. But that's the idea. And the idea, it hasn't changed from the beginning, Jamal. It's been very, like we've taken a lot of turns, and it's probably taking a lot more than what the Israelis expected initially. But the end is going to be the same that it was from the beginning, right? From the very beginning, they were talking about pushing the Palestinians to the Sinai in Egypt and of taking control of Gaza themselves, right? Like rebuilding the settlements. You had the finance minister just a few days ago come out in a conference and said we need to stop being afraid of the world occupation, and Gaza is going to be totally destroyed and there's not going to be anyone left. Yeah. And that rhetoric, those statements, they align exactly with what the statements were from officials at the beginning of the genocide, which was, the children of Amalek, the human animals, complete destruction, no electricity, no food, just a siege. Nothing has changed. The only thing, that has changed, I would say, is the perception of what's happening in Gaza. I feel like that is continued to change, because at the beginning you had a number of people, I would include you and me among those, calling it what it was, right? What's happening in Gaza, an ethnic cleansing campaign. And now what you're seeing is kind of like that starting to finally land in some other people's heads, in the, politicians, media outlets, etc. Like you had the FT, right? Financial Times this week put out this editorial in which they condemn the Western silence on Gaza, which is very surprising, although completely late, incredibly late.
It's like we're a year and a half into it, and they're like, hey,
And like now,
Something's
right? Like
happening in
now,
Gaza that's pretty
like is it time
shameful.
to speak up now?
Right.
Is it time? So we wait a bit more, maybe a few more dead children would be good too, so
Yeah.
we can, we're not called anti-Semites. You had this British member of parliament also, right? You must have seen the video of him, and that he was talking about, like, I always supported Israel, but now I realize I'm wrong, and
So
we need to call, like, for an end to this. Baby steps still, but the perception is changing, right? And I mean baby steps in the sense of, like, look at the destruction, right? And look at what they're actually about to do. Like right now, they are calling up reservists to send them back into Gaza and implement the final solution. That's it, right? Like there's no other way. There's no other word for it. This is not a war. This hasn't been a war for a year and a half. This is not about terrorism. What's terrorism if it's not bombing a hospital or bombing a humanitarian shelter, or, like, UN vehicles or ambulances? That's terrorism, right?
yeah.
If the word means anything, it's that. So the US comes in with this plan that they're going to run the concentration camp where the Palestinians are going to be trapped. And now we know that the United States is really has become really interested, or involved in concentration camps, right? You have the Segot in El Salvador, and now you have them talking with Libya, Ukraine, and Rwanda about taking these migrants that are just being arrested randomly in the US. So what's another concentration camp? What's another, black site prison to run?
They asked Trump, hey, are you sending migrants to Libya? Think about that for the moment. Like, let's say you are a migrant from Ecuador.
Yeah.
And the Trump administration is like, okay, I'm going to send you to Libya.
To Libya?
How the hell does that, like, that is mind-blowing. And by the way, illegal, right? Like, there's no way that is legal. And yet, he's still probably going to do it.
Yeah, I mean, like, he's reviving the slave market. That's what it is. Because in Libya, you've had, since the NATO involvement in that country, you had open-air slave markets. What does that mean, right? Like, you're going to send, like in El Salvador, these people are already being sent as slaves, right? They're free labor for the Salvadorian government. And now you have them in Libya, right? Like, in Libya, you already have open-air slave markets. So if you're a migrant going to the US, you might actually end up at a slave market for absolutely no reason. Just because, I guess, it's profitable to someone.
And they asked Trump, hey, are you doing that? He was like, I don't know. Like, it is really hard to get across how absurd this presidency is, where the president seems to be out of touch with what is taking place. Like, for example, they asked them to say, hey, J.D. Vance says that the Russians are just are making maximalist demands. He was like, really? Maybe you know something I don't. What? Like, you're the president. And then apparently Hegseth on its own, decided not to give Ukraine armaments. And Trump didn't know that Hegseth is the one that effectively stopped weapons going to Ukraine for a period of time. Like, how are you the president and so out of touch with everything that's taking place? Hey, do you think people should get due process? I don't know. I'm not a lawyer. What?
Yeah, I don't think he believes that anyway. I'm sorry, but no, like, actually, one of the most interesting things was this what happened with Mike Waltz, and I know we discussed this a few days ago, the last time I was on your show. But what I wanted to add to that is that today, Israel Hayom, right, this Hebrew news outlet, comes out with a report saying that right now Trump is disappointed in Netanyahu and doesn't even want to involve him in anything because of the Mike Waltz situation. Right, because Mike Waltz, before being booted, he was having apparently intense talks with Israel, with Netanyahu behind Trump's back about an attack on Iran, and that didn't fly. That apparently didn't really sit well with him. And now look at what happened this week, right? We haven't had a chance to talk about it. When Trump says that Yemen gave up, right? He comes out and says, the Houthis are tired of us bombing them. They don't want us to be bombing them anymore, so they gave up. A complete fabrication. But
he's lying to his teeth.
Exactly. But the really most important part about that is he doesn't inform Israel. And not only does he not inform Israel, he doesn't include them in the ceasefire agreement with Yemen. So essentially telling the Israelis, you know what, you deal with them because we are done. Like and it's really funny because at the end of the day, the United States comes into this war to protect Israeli vessels, right? They say that it's for freedom of navigation and for global commerce and, capitalism and whatever. In reality, it's like to protect the Israeli vessels and Israeli cities that were getting bombed by Yemen. That's the aim, right? They spend billions, they wait a year and 3 months, and then they withdraw without achieving the goal, and just like essentially taking their ships and leaving the Israelis to their fate in the Red Sea.
By the way, I have that clip because I ran this the other day with one of my guests, Tim Anderson, and it is one of the funniest things in the world. Trump's like, "Oh, Yemen capitulated. They gave up. They got tired of fighting." He says they're brave and blah blah blah. And then the reporter asked them this.
The Houthis are backing down. We're seeing conflicting reports that they plan on continuing to attack Israel in support of Gaza. Does that change the equation?
No, I don't know about that, frankly, but I know one thing: they want nothing to do with us, and they've let that be known through all of their surrogates, and very strongly.
So effectively, well, look, they stopped attacking American ships. So that's all we care about. That's what we've agreed. We don't attack them. They don't attack us. We're calling it a day. We're taking our ships and we're leaving. And it's like, hey, but they're still attacking Israel. I don't know anything about that. That's an amazing clip, right? Because it means that the Houthis still are doing what they said they were going to do in the first place. We were having an air and sea blockade on Israel. That's what we're going to do. And the U.S., despite all of the bombing, has not been able to change us from doing that.
Exactly. So, the report from today essentially says he's losing patience. Trump is pretty much sick at this point. And in particular, it's regarding Saudi Arabia, right? Because remember that the U.S. and Saudi Arabia have been talking about an expanded defense treaty for Israel for a while now, right? And even remember, one of the driving forces behind the Al-Aqsa flood operation by Hamas and others on October 7, 2023, was, first of all, the Israeli violations at Al-Aqsa Mosque. That's top. The second one was the normalization between Saudi Arabia and Israel, right? Mm-hmm. Which was imminent. Remember at that point, I remember very clearly, the end of September, around September 30, 2023, they were talking this is a done deal. We're just going to sign in a few days. Then Al-Aqsa flood happens, and what happened next. And the United States has since then been trying to kind of pick up the pieces of this deal. Right. And at the same time, Saudi Arabia took part in the BRICS summit a few days ago, in the foreign minister summit, although they are not a part of BRICS, Saudi Arabia. They haven't formally committed, but they also haven't formally said no. They're just right there in between. So Trump wants, the Saudis on his side completely, and the Saudis want to be on the U.S. side completely. But Israel keeps being the stone in their shoe, the pebble in the shoe, by not doing anything besides killing Palestinians, right? And this is not to say that the Saudi Arabian government cares about Palestinians. They care about the optics of being, the guardians of the two holiest places in Islam, to be the ones normalizing with a genocidal regime that is killing Arabs, Sunni Arabs, not because I'm guessing if the Palestinians were mainly Shia, the normalization would have already been signed. Mm-hmm. But since they're Sunnis, it makes things much more complicated for them. So now Trump losing patience because Israel's holding up the deal with the Saudis, and is making him look bad at the end of the day. Like I said, there is a very continuous movement towards realizing that what's happening in Gaza needs to be condemned, right? By the Israel's most ardent supporters. Even they are starting to wonder, I don't want to be complicit in the death of so many children. So I would say that even Donald Trump, to some degree, is probably, feeling feeling tired about the situation, I would say, because he started his government with a ceasefire, right? Even before he came to power, he, exactly, it wasn't really much of a ceasefire, but for the New York Times, Washington Post, Fox News, CNN, etc., they could call it a ceasefire, and be happy with it. Yeah. He could call it a ceasefire and be happy with it. But now we're back to a situation that is worse than what it was at the end of Biden's presidency. And at some point, that's going to reflect on Donald Trump, right? And now, if they want the U.S. to have this administration of Gaza, I also don't think this is going to involve deploying U.S. troops to Gaza,
Mm.
right?
Yeah.
Probably not. What it means is like they talk about an Arab coalition, right? So, and what is an Arab coalition going to look like? It's probably going to be like a bunch of these ISIS people who are in the prisons in Syria, or like mercenaries, maybe Eric Prince, maybe his companies, maybe from Africa, right? Maybe they'll get like their thugs from Somalia or etc. to
Mhm.
come and play guards in this concentration camp. But what they need is the optics. They need the optics of the Saudi deal, and well, the money from it, and they need the optics of the ceasefire, and they need, they want diplomacy. They say they want diplomacy to work with Iran, which I believe it for now. It feels like this is a decision that works to them at this point. I don't know if this is a decision that will work for them, down the line, because the whole war creep, for example, between India and Pakistan also feels like it's an attempt to ignite wars that are closer to that side of the world than to Israel.
Mhm. The India-Pakistan thing is complicated to me.
Understand.
Because if 26 Americans were killed, we'd lose our minds also.
Mhm.
And, I've had conversations with both reporters from India and from Pakistan. They are in two different worlds in regards to what's happening. One would say they think it's a false flag that India murdered. They would go so far as to say India murdered its own people in order to create a pretext for war. That is a heavy lift for me to accept. By the same token, India is like Pakistan has been working with all of these terrorist groups, which is true, by the way. I think Pakistan would even admit that. And
you must have seen the clip from the defense minister in which he said we've been doing this dirty work from the
Yeah,
US and the West for
exactly,
the past 30
right.
years.
Yeah, he's like, we've been doing it for the West for years, right?
Yeah.
Which is fascinating that they would admit something like that. The reason he was doing it, though, he was trying to indict the reporter, because the reporter is sitting there with this kind of Western arrogance. Yeah, but you've been, working with terrorist groups, right? Yeah, for you. We've been working with them for you.
Yeah,
So I think he was trying to indict them. And India's point is like, dude, you've been running terrorist attacks in India for years. And regardless of the information that we put out to prove it, regardless of, and this is the Indian perspective, right? When they were explained, nobody has done anything about it. Meaning, if these were Americans, Europeans that were killed, the world would be in outrage. But because they're Indians, they're brown, you don't care. So we have the military power to deal with this ourselves. We're not going to give this information out any more than the U.S. would give information out if their citizens were killed. We're going to respond. And Pakistan is saying, this is outrageous. You've attacked us. Mm-hmm. And it just escalated and escalated and escalated. And at this point, apparently Pakistan used a Chinese missile to shoot down the Indian plane, at the very least one. They're saying that Indian media reported 3. Okay, fair enough. Mm-hmm. India has been firing missiles into Pakistan at this point. Pakistan apparently has responded with missiles of their own.
India has been launching Israeli drones, like Israeli suicide drones. That's what they said this morning.
Yes. Yeah, I saw the images of it. So this is just escalating. And I have to think that if the Victory Day parade wasn't taking place, that Putin and Xi Jinping would be intensely trying to get this to stop in regards to diplomacy.
Yeah. So, the Iranian foreign minister was in Pakistan until yesterday. Now he's in India. Mm-hmm. So he's kind of taking the flag, right?
They've signed a deal, actually. Mm-hmm. I think I have a clip of that, where the Pakistani minister, I'm sorry, not the Pakistani minister, India, where is it? I have so many of these screens up. But if I'm not mistaken, they signed some kind of economic partnership between each other yesterday, India and Iran, just kind of out the blue.
Yeah.
Here we are.
They are BRICS partners, Iran and India.
That is true. No, you're right. That is true. They signed a strategic partnership. I have to believe that this war is not what any of these groups, be it India, be it Iran, China.
No, I don't think that they really want war, right? The Iranians don't want war. That's apparent. And I don't know about the Indians, to be honest. Like you said, Pakistan, India, it's complicated, but you do know that the Indian government is a bit extreme, to say the least.
Explain this to me. Okay, so go into it, because some of my audience members would even say this is a false flag, and my thing is like, okay, well, what is the reason that India would want a war
Okay,
with
so
Pakistan?
yeah, well, I'm not an expert here, but it's pretty well understood that the Indian government is a Hindu nationalist, right?
Right.
Like these people are very much, I would say, anti-Muslim to some
Very
degree.
intense. Yeah.
They do persecute them. They do see themselves as superior, and we know Pakistan is an Islamic republic, right? So this is where you see kind of the closeness that exists between India and the Israeli government. Right, like they're very close. They're very friendly. They arm them. Israeli weapons are present in India. They're being used, as we said. So this is
But that's
like a
different than
very
wanting a
easy
war.
conflict to ignite. Right?
Yeah, but that's different than wanting a war. Like, meaning it's a heavy, like it's one thing to say, okay, well, these guys are Hindu nationalists and they don't like Muslims. Fair enough. Fair enough. It's another thing to say that they murdered 26 of their own to create a pretext to attack Pakistan. And it's like, to what end? Is it to take territory? Is it to...
Yeah, I don't, that's interesting. Is it to take territory? Is it to, push Pakistan from the side of Kashmir and Jammu that they control?
Yeah. Right.
Is it that? I wouldn't be so perplexed or shocked to find out that India did it on their own, because we've known, like, states are not afraid to go in and just like kill their own people for a purpose. Again, the easiest example always going to be Israel. What happened on October the 7th was mostly Israeli caused deaths. The Hannibal Directive.
That was Israel under attack, where they were responding just in a rabid fashion, murdering their own citizens in response.
Yeah,
this is tourists, civilians.
Yeah, but here's what's interesting, right? Like, who actually did the attack, right? Who did the attack? Because you had them blame the Resistance Front, I think it was called, this group, a Kashmiri separatist or a resistance faction, and then they come out a few days after, it said that it's them, then saying it wasn't us, we got hacked, our accounts got hacked, the statement that came out, it wasn't from us. So there's many questions really at the end of the day. I think in my perspective, the whole situation with India and Pakistan is just trying to ignite a front that is closer to China, right? Like, it's the war creep towards China. This is where we're headed. I don't think Donald Trump is rethinking a war against China. I think he rethinks war against Iran a lot. But I think there's like this concerted effort from the United States that they need to have this war against China. I don't even think because they think they can win, but just because they need to ignite a war, right? They need to like an excuse for nations to stop trading with China, to make China the bad guy, right? But as we saw with the tariffs, this is gonna blow up in their face. But the money must be really good to continue with it. The weapon stocks, the production, right? The United States at this point is a nation that is its main industry is war. Yeah. What else do they manufacture in the US that isn't bombs and that isn't weapons?
When people talk about Joe Biden, they always say Joe Biden is out of his mind, which is true. I do think it's true. Yeah. They often would say, though, that somebody else is running foreign policy, and I always disagree with it, because in my mind, there are two things that are taking place at once. There's globalists who care more about this kind of economic control of the globe, and there are neocons who may not care all that much about the economic part, but they do care about control, like this kind of power projection and control. Both are lunatics. And you can get a person who would say, we need China embroiled into a proxy war. And so let's use Taiwan in order to go after China, or yes, lose Ukraine to go after Russia, without necessarily caring all that much about the consequences of doing so, because it backfired. Like, yeah, Europe stopped trading with Russia, but look at what Russia did. They started making business relationships all over the world, like literally business relationships. And even started threatening the dollar by saying, hey, You took us off the SWIFT system. Okay, we need to come up with our own currency. In which case, Trump freaks out. It's like, hey, we need to make deals with the Russians because we need to stop them from doing that. Okay, well, the neocons don't care about that per se. They want to still go after Russia any way they can, or go after China any way they can. I agree with you. I guess my thing is, does a war between India and Pakistan do that? It does create conflict in the region, and it is a situation where China works with Pakistan, but it also works with India. And it's not like the US has a close relationship with India in this proxy sense in the way that it does with Ukraine. I guess I have a hard time seeing, I get how a conflict in the region can create chaos. I don't entirely see how it embroils China into anything.
Well, I mean, it could simply be, like making India pick a side, because India has been kind of the Trojan horse in BRICS as well, right?
Right.
In particular, Modi.
Yes,
it could
especially
be,
with the currency. Yes.
Yeah, like to mess with the Road and Belt initiative as well, right?
No.
With this project that they've already been, what
Right,
they did in the
expensive.
Panama Canal,
Right.
right? Like they just did that. That was about the Belt and Road initiative was happening in Panama, and it's just about messing with the Chinese. It could be also about Iran. Iran and Pakistan and have they I think they share a border, actually. Maybe I'm wrong here, but they have
do,
several
but they
deals.
even have border skirmishes, though. I mean, this goes to the terrorism thing. There's been
Yeah, but
skirmishes
they've been
between
normalized,
Iran and
right?
Pakistan.
Like Pakistan with Iran. Although actually, no, over the past, I remember a couple of years ago that Iran has been like pressuring Pakistan to pay their side of an oil pipeline.
Yes.
The Iran-Pakistan oil pipeline that Iran already finished building in 2015, and Pakistan has yet, to set a stone because the United States is not letting them. But no, actually, the other one is, I would say, India-China, right? Because India and China have de-escalated significantly over recent years.
Yeah.
They demobilized their troops from the shared border a few months ago, actually. It was very recent. So it really seems like I just like throwing a wrench into the proceedings, right? In a way that they, I guess, seek to control, right, with this conflict.
Or both of these countries have agency, and both of these countries have a storied history.
Yeah.
That they've been in conflict for years, and any spark pops it off. Like, look, I get it, right? Like, we're so accustomed to looking at the world in this kind of global lens, and many of these countries are used as useful idiots for larger conflicts. These are two massive countries, though. And I would agree with you that the Pakistani military has a close relationship with the United States. Is it possible that one of these terrorist groups did this to spark something? Maybe. Is it also possible that there's a terrorist group roaming through this region that killed these people, and that India is responding because 26 or 25 of their people were killed? Like, I don't know. I'm stuck in this position where I just don't know.
I remember reading a few weeks ago, I think this is something we put out the Cradle about exactly this. And our writer, he mentioned that, well, first of all, that this is not like the first terror attack in I don't know how many years. That has happened before in the Kashmir administered, Indian administered Kashmir.
Yeah.
And the reaction was never this, right? It was never like these were going to start bombing your country and just escalate out of control.
Sorry to interrupt real quick. That's true, because in the other circumstances, India was trying to get the world community to back them, and the world community didn't care. And this time around, India was like, okay, we're taking the gloves off. We have no fucks to give. We're not taking this shit anymore.
Yeah,
and we're trying to send a message.
The timing of it, what I already said, like also this group, the resistance fronts had been dormant for years, and all of a sudden they just wake up. None of these things are coincidental, right? Like maybe that's a jaded perspective, but I think once you start actually studying history, and once you start to actually seeing look at the Nord Stream, for example, right? The pipeline. Yeah. They want us to believe that it was like 6 guys in a yacht that did it.
Look, I accept that. And look, there's even CIA documents where they wanted to go to war with Castro, and they were going to either kill Americans for real or simulate it in order to create a pretext to do it.
Exactly, like or like the Cuban Americans, these terrorists who bombed the hotel in Havana, or bombed a bunch of hotels in Havana during the 60s, I think, or the 70s.
Yeah.
All of these things are, they have a purpose. And I feel like when you put, when something happens that pits two nuclear powered nations against each other at a time in which you already have these wars igniting everywhere, I'll take it with a grain of salt, right? Like,
Yeah.
I don't believe that this group just like came out of nowhere and was like, no, today we're gonna go and prove our point and for a free Kashmir. And it just seems too convenient. It just really seems too convenient. And like I said, at this point, one of the only driving forces of the U.S. economy is war. And there's really not much more. There's not much. I'm sorry?
Pakistan was using a Chinese missile, and India was using, like you said, Israeli drones, and French jets. So what we've seen used was technology from other countries, not America. Mm. And I guess my thing is, sometimes in a dream, a hammer is just a hammer. There's not any overt significance to it. Look, again, I do get it, right? I guess I'm saying I don't know. I'm not taking a position one way or the other. And I guess it sounds like I'm pushing back. I guess my position is I really don't know. These countries, they have a history of conflict. So it's not like, like Ukraine is neutral, the government is overthrown by the US proxies, and the proxies used to go. It's not that. You have two countries that have a history of war with each other and conflict that has never eased up, and a match goes off. Now, the catch becomes, why did that match go off? Which is your point. Why did that just happen?
And why did that? The timing, right? And maybe, you're right. You're right about the equipment, right? It's being a French and Chinese, but it could be just the Indian government being like, we need to galvanize, right, this movement behind us. Even though it's already pretty galvanized, like there's never gonna be enough threats for a government that wants to stay in power, right? And this is, for example, something that's happening in my country, in Ecuador, which is like every day, every 2 days, there's like a new threat. Something is trying to overthrow the government. So that you galvanize, right? And is there actually something trying to overthrow the government? Is there actually something threatening? Oh, no, there really isn't, right? This is all like, ghosts. This is made up stories. But what it does, it gives you that excuse. Right? Yeah. And so I feel like there's many angles. And I don't think we're going to actually know what happened until, I hope, things de-escalate. I hope the Iranians manage to work diplomacy, because at this point, you don't really see Western diplomacy in Pakistan and India. They're not, where's the French foreign minister? Where's the US? Where's Rubio? Where's anybody else, right? Right now, you only have the Iranians coming in and being like, hey, guys, can we chill here? Because this is all of us that are going to be affected.
Yeah, I agree with you. I strongly suspect that Russia and China are going to get involved. Like, hey, calm the F down. like we get it. You guys, you're pissed off. Yeah. We get it.
These people bring Pakistan into BRICS. Just bring them into BRICS and be like, hey, let's learn to live along with each other.
Chill out. Yeah, that's what China did with Saudi Arabia, right? It was Saudi Arabia and Iran, and China came out of nowhere, and it's like, all right, we got a deal between these two. And Saudi Arabia was kind of like a junior partner of BRICS, even though, like you said, they're not in it entirely, but they're not out of it either. Esteban, man, I've enjoyed this conversation. I really have. Thank you for this. I always appreciate these conversations. We have a damn good crowd. We had up to 700 people here today.
Oh, amazing.
The channel is growing. So we have new people that seem to be joining with us, and they seem to be enjoying these conversations also. Thank you for this, man. I really do appreciate it. And just so people would know where you are, Esteban Carrillo, he is Ecuadorian journalist, currently writing for The Cradle. He was previously with the great organization Tell Us Sir English. Esteban, where else can people find you, by the way?
Well, they can find me on Twitter. This is my handle underneath me right now. And they can find us at thecradle.co, The Cradle Media on platforms, and social media platforms. And on YouTube as well, we have a podcast, a weekly podcast goes out on Mondays called The Cradle News Roundup. So make sure to check that out.
Badass, man. Thank you for this. You have a damn good day. I'll see you in a few.
Jamal.
Have a good one. Be safe. All right. We have had a really good show